Welcome to another episode of No Free Lunch, Africa's freshest business and tech podcast, with me, your host, Greg Stewart. The discussion today is around the ever-growing significance of WhatsApp in business and in the African business landscape, and what this means for business leaders and how they should look to incorporate WhatsApp as a key component in their business operations. My guest today, I'm happy to have Rob Lith, the Chief Commercial Officer at Telviva, a leading South African cloud communications provider based in Cape Town. Rob is a seasoned ICT and internet specialist with extensive experience in the telecoms and unified communications sector. Welcome to No Free Lunch, Rob.
Thank you very much, and thanks for the introduction there. Yeah.
Well, it's been a while since we chatted last and about what was happening at Telviva and some of the developments. And more recently, you've been talking about WhatsApp business calling and WhatsApp services and so on. That has really seen significant traction in South Africa. So from your perspective, how's this feature practically reshaping customer engagement journeys for local businesses, and particularly as businesses are moving towards trying to build more seamless, efficient, I think, client communication structures? Tell us a bit about that and how you see that landscape at the moment.
Yeah. Well, I think if we look back, it's been almost a year or so, maybe a bit more, where we've had the inflection point where voice was once the most dominant channel that consumers and people used to communicate with. Voice was the majority of the interactions. And we've now seen a crossover now where various messaging apps have higher interactions than the traditional voice calls. You know, while we started off as a voice business back in 2004, email and voice was about the only channels that you used. And then SMS came in that. And then now there's countless different channels that people can communicate with.
Yeah. And
depending on which country you're in, you know, it's either WhatsApp being the most popular or Apple's messaging, for instance, in the United States. In South Africa, it's by far predominantly WhatsApp. And they estimate, you know, amongst our population of 40, 50 million odd, that 28 or more million people are using WhatsApp every day for communications. And so, you know, it's extremely important for businesses to meet their customers through what method they want to communicate with. So WhatsApp started off, you know, your personal WhatsApp. For a long time now, you've been able to do text and voice and a video chat. So you
Yes.
could do all three methods of communication. When Meta introduced WhatsApp Business, which is a channel that businesses can use to have people's WhatsApp communications come into them, and it can be handled by the business with full visibility across teams of people handling those interactions. It's only been text-based. So if you then wanted to talk to the business, you'd have to make a voice call to them, and that had to be outside of the WhatsApp channel. So earlier this year, Meta introduced voice calling for WhatsApp Business. And I think they did it sensibly and in a measured way so that users still have control of their communications and how they get communicated with. And there's quite an important distinction here in that traditionally people have been receiving high volumes of unsolicited calls.
Yes.
And that's been an irritation for people. I think Meta and WhatsApp Business didn't want to just introduce calling for WhatsApp where calls could just be randomly made, and you know that whole thing persists where users get unwanted calls. So they've done it in a way that very much puts the control in the user's hands. So they do that in two ways. Any user from their WhatsApp can initiate a message chat with the business, or they can initiate a voice call and go immediately into a voice call with the business. However, if a business wants to communicate to that customer, they've got to do it on a permission-based method. So similar to outbound chat messaging, text messaging from WhatsApp Business, you've had to send out an approved message template to say, we're messaging to you concerning this. And Meta had 4 types of services: marketing messages, service messages, OTPs, and a 4th type that eludes me at the moment. Similarly, now when a customer wants to make a voice call to a person, they've got to send a template out saying, we're so-and-so, we'd like to speak to you. Will you accept a call from us? And in WhatsApp, when that user says, I approve, you can make a call to me, the business then has within 72 hours to then call that customer.
Yeah.
And the person...
I think the whole... Sorry, Rob, just to interject there. I think the whole opt-in cycle is a much better and customer-friendly way of going about
method.
Communications than we've seen in the past. Spam calls. My wife has been absolutely inundated with calls from some arbitrary service provider that ostensibly works under the auspices of Vodacom, for instance, and simply because she chose to cancel a contract. And now they just phone her day and night until I got hold of this chap at the call center and actually said to him, listen, you guys are completely poppy, non-compliant, and you need to take us off your list. They were phoning me eventually because I was apparently a contact on her. I mean, but it has gone to that extreme, and this at least gives the consumer some control, and they can always opt out of the channel or out of the messages and just close it. And I think that's far more customer friendly. And just in terms of the actual compliance, I'm assuming that WhatsApp has then ensured that its processes are POPI compliant, and that if businesses sign up for the service, it by that opt-in, it then is compliant.
Yeah, WhatsApp calls for a start, same as chats, are encrypted end to end. When you are interacting with a business, then the consumer's endpoint of WhatsApp connecting to the business's WhatsApp application, the calls are private and encrypted. When it comes into the application that the customer is using to manage the interaction as they would a voice call, and there would be, for instance, call recording on a particular voice call interaction, and you have methods of having that compliantly stored. The WhatsApp interaction can also be recorded at the point where it's received. So private on the path to the business. Once the business got it, they can have a call recording of it, they can have a transcription of it. So that business that's using WhatsApp Business to interact with their customers needs to apply the same governance and compliance as they would traditionally with call recordings and text transcriptions, that they are stored securely and comply with the various regulations. But to go on from what is more than just users having chat or voice interactions over WhatsApp, being able to bring all of those communications in through a particular business channel to the business, rather than having dozens of staff members all with their personal WhatsApps and customers saying, well, just WhatsApp me on this, and then that is isolated and only with that particular person. The company has no oversight of that. They have no visibility of that. And particularly if that person leaves the business, they leave the business with their WhatsApp, with all of those contacts that they've been dealing with. So it gives much more ability for the customer to comply with those requirements. And I think also what is more important at the moment now is customers are looking at what we call omni-channel solutions. So
yes,
if I happen to interact with the customer yesterday by email and they haven't replied to me yet, and then I'd send them a message by WhatsApp Business, or I do a voice call by WhatsApp Business, the company needs to know they emailed me yesterday. They're now calling with some chase up or matter to be followed up on. need to have visibility of those. If the company is using individual users' WhatsApps to all of their customers, they have no view of that 360 view of a customer. Did they email? Yeah. Did they call in by traditional voice? Are they now messaging by WhatsApp? Have they commented on social media that they're unhappy about something? So bringing this WhatsApp business into the company's overall omni-channel application or integrations into their CRM application so that all of the past interactions can be viewed so that you can immediately de-escalate call that might have some tension in that by saying, sorry, Rob, I see you emailed us yesterday and we're investigating that, but I haven't been able to get back to you yet. The person immediately says, okay, well, they know what I've been calling about. I don't have to regurgitate all that I've been doing.
About the situation. And that more often than not, especially having dealt with call centers for so many years, is a big nightmare and a big issue around customer service. That whole fragmented communications that just creates really poor customer services. Just explain the whole structure for me a bit, please. And I think it's really important that businesses also understand this. If you've got a channel, I recently interviewed somebody who had a product where they were even doing contracts and setting up payment systems via WhatsApp. Correct. Now, I'm assuming that at the back end of this whole system is some sort of integration with a CRM or a client management system where you can actually track it and see, as you might say, perhaps emails, et cetera, et cetera. Just explain how that whole thing works and what that looks like so that businesses are aware how to create that whole integration.
Yeah. So generally, a company providing a WhatsApp business service, they would work through one of Meta's BSPs, as they call by their acronym, which is a business solutions provider. And there's a handful of kind of top tier BSPs who provide the WhatsApp business channel back into Meta. There's InfoBip, there's Clickatel, there's Bird, CM.com, and these companies provide the channel from Meta into almost like a transaction engine and a switching fabric, which then you get a channel to the WhatsApp business account that the business has. And for that, they need to have a Facebook account, and they need to have the Meta business account for having WhatsApp come into that. Once they've got all of that in place, I must also add, companies, depending on their own internal IT skills and what they can do themselves, can connect a WhatsApp business channel directly into Meta. Okay. But it does mean that you need to have the IT skills and developers and infrastructure in place to do the types of solutions that you're talking about, of being able to do payments, to be able to do a digital agent type thing, to look at a database of FAQs and answer questions to the person having the chat. Commonly then, when you have that channel into your business, you would have some kind of contact center application. Commonly now it would be an omni-channel contact center application. It could also be a channel directly integrated into a CRM application, but commonly the CRM application is what a contact center would reference for certain information and send back certain information to be stored. So a record of the interaction is done there. But it is the second point that I was going to get onto, because having WhatsApp and doing a chat or a voice call in itself is, what does that do? It lets you have an interaction with the person. You can answer some questions, but then if there's a next step, how do you do that? So I'm WhatsApp chatting with the person who's asking me a question like, can I book a bus ticket to so-and-so? And I say, sure, let me take all your details, and then swivel my chair and go and plug it into a booking system for the bus. That's where what we focus on as well is the customer journey, and during that journey where there needs to be automation of certain things. I often cite a classic example of what we did for a national bus liner, where they were traditionally a inbound voice contact center with people calling in to book buses and check on timetables and find out how much baggage they can take on board and what age a child can still sit in their lap, all of those types of things. And they did a little bit of outbound calling for sales and that, but it was predominantly inbound. We started off with a WhatsApp business channel for them, initially text-based, and their agents could claim a particular chat that comes into the queue as such, and they can manually answer questions. We did some very, very elementary things where you could have some hotkeys, so you could say /hello, and it would say, hello, so-and-so, how can we help you and whatnot. But that part has now evolved into them having a digital agent that it connects to initially. And they can say to the digital agent in a natural language with the generative AI being used, do you have buses to Benoni? And it'll come back and says, yes, from Cape Town on these and these days and this time. So that agent then goes and looks at a customer's private data store of information and FAQs and can answer some of those kind of routine questions that agents would normally be dealing with, which are mundane and routine. They can be easily automated, but we're always keeping the human in the loop. So when it can't answer, it escalates it to an agent.
Right.
And then after that, we took it one step further to say, you want to book the bus in your WhatsApp chat. Press a button to them and say, click this, which takes them to busbooking.com or whatever the site is. Yeah. They go through the process through a secure payment gateway system to book the bus. The payment is done securely through that payment gateway that they have and the PCI DSS compliance there. And then once the bus is booked, it passes that information back to the WhatsApp chat with the ticket in a PDF or a QR code or some other form that can be used. And then we start getting into the whole automation, so that there's not that swivel chair from the agent, just chatting and then doing something else, switching to another screen even, say, and then putting information in there. It automates that whole process. And that's where the value for a business, because then what happened with this national bus liner is a lot of their inbound resources that were being used to answer these questions, there was no reduction in agents at all in that. Those agents could then start proactively doing some outbound services, answering more tricky questions, and it, as they say, pivoted their business. They could now focus on doing much more outbound sales. And so I think that's the value of any of the channels that we are doing now, is not just to have the channel and have it isolated to having a chat there. Okay, maybe it's visible in the omni-channel or in the CRM, but unless you trigger automations from it, that's where business optimization starts.
Yeah. So Rob, just on that, when we talk about these things, and obviously there's a lot of development around agents and developing agents, but a lot of business owners simply don't have perhaps the technical skills or an idea of where do you start? How do you start developing a WhatsApp strategy? What are the key ingredients, and what should business leaders and entrepreneurs be looking for right from the beginning to make sure that what they're doing actually adds value to their company, actually, creates more productivity or creates more bookings in the case of a bus service, et cetera, et cetera. Talk to us a bit about that and what business leaders should be looking at.
Yeah. I think it's like we had to transform our business to address these customer requirements. Started off 2004 to 2009 odd doing voice, and for voice we had a service installation team that used to go to the customer and install their systems. We used to have a support team that dealt with some of their support requirements, and we had a sales team, business development leaders who went for new business, and we had customer experience leaders who were account managers. But when we started getting into and we had always been doing contact centers, but very voice-centric contact center services. When we then started developing into providing the omni-channel contact center solutions, and it was obvious that there needed to be a bit of a reinvention of the business process that the customer was doing, because, it's the same as when customers used to come to us and say, I've got this Keystone PBX in my office under the staircase cupboard. Can you take this and make it work like that in the cloud? And you've got to say, you've got to find a smarter way to do that. The way that was operating is not the smart way it could do. So similarly, if there was a particular business process of handling single channel contact center interactions, and you're now going to a cloud-based service where there's omni-channel, you've got to do a little bit of a reinvention of the business process. Now, either the business has some skills to be able to look at that and do it, but commonly what we did is our business expanded to also have a more dedicated, focused team of contact center account managers, solution designers, and particularly a customer journey specialist, so that they could take the customer's current process and say, right, the way that you should do it is by these and these steps and that, and your CRM can do this and this can do that. And then, getting the customer onto their kind of digital journey. Also then post that, once it's been done, do some analytics and analysis of how that is now working. When the customer comes into a particular channel, are they staying and continuing on through the process, or are they always having to be escalated to humans? When people call in, are they getting to the correct destination? Because, now we're getting much smarter IVRs, when we can get a digital agent IVR that can say, how can we help you today? I said, I'd like to speak to somebody in sales, and it'll do that rather than you having to go through the IVR, 1, press 2. So, that whole, the businesses really need to find a service provider or a communications provider such as ourselves, who has evolved their own business to be able to provide the services like that customer journey mapping and working with the customer to do that. Because to just try and transplant what the customer's got into the new environment and say, well, we did it by taking the customer through steps A, B, C, D, make it go A, B, C, D here, and the customer has a worse experience, potentially.
Yeah, in fact, I had a recent discussion around similar topic where one of my guests was talking about why bolting on an AI solution is simply a bad strategy. And I can sort of adopt that to this conversation to say, to bolt on an omni-channel solution onto your existing operation is also probably a bad idea, simply because when you come to these kind of automations, it's almost time to rethink your whole operation, your whole business, and to say, how can you take your business and how can you make it far more efficient? How can you make it more customer friendly? And what implications does that have for the overall business? And where are you going to then take the productivity that was aimed at, solving those issues that are now automated, and plug that production in elsewhere in your company? How can you mention, perhaps more focus on sales and so on? So that really does become. Carry on.
Yeah, sorry. I think, and it also does mean a little bit more work for the business, because, for instance, and going back to the WhatsApp business discussion that we're having in particular, when Meta engineered the way that you can message customers, they had the same price for a marketing message as a service message, as an OTP message. But then they realized people were using the marketing message more than any of the others necessarily. So they said there's more value in that. So as any business, smart business would do, they increased the cost of what the marketing message is to the business. But they also did it with a justification that they want to steer businesses into doing smarter, more targeted messaging to their customers, not a spray and pray. So yes. They've engineered the pricing to put a bit of a handbrake on that spray and pray, and incentivize customers to get more specific and targeted in their messaging in that. And that is where the strength of the new systems being developed, by BSPs, those business solution providers of Meta, and then customers themselves, to say, you now need to start looking at your CRM and your customer base and start building up what the industry calls a CDP, or a customer data profile, so that
Yes.
you can say, for this customer between 18 and 25, they prefer to be messaged and then emailed and then called. This person is 45 to 60. They prefer to have a voice call first, then a message and email, and lastly, they want to do some messaging. And so when you start messaging them, you have the database information to say, message them by this message first. If that fails, use this one. And then also don't do it between this time and that time, because, and so, so that's yet another one of the kind of controls to manage this unsolicited and spamming kind of calling that we're getting. And it saves resources of the customer as well, because when the business is doing these WhatsApp messaging, that they as a business are paying for that. So if you're sending out 10,000 messages and you're only getting 2% response to it, you're paying for 98% of interaction. Whereas if you start honing it down to very targeted, focused, relevant messages, then your return on investment on that is that much better.
Rob, it's a fascinating scenario and development, and no doubt we'll see
Indeed.
some more WhatsApp innovations in the next couple of years, and look forward to having a chat to you about that. Unfortunately, we're out of time, but I want to thank you for joining me on No Free Lunch, and thank you for spreading some light on the whole new WhatsApp developments, and wish you everything of the best.
And thank you very much for inviting me, and enjoyed.